I'm Crystal Brogdon. Um, I teach an emotional behavior FSC class. And what keeps me in special education, as you can see in my pictures, it's my students. It's the moments that I get to share with them and witness them winning and build their confidence and watching them work towards becoming better. And that is everything that makes my heart happy right now.
Hi guys, my name's Evelyn Gomez. I am on the island of Maui, and I teach at Maui High School. I'm in an FSC classroom. Most of my kids either have severe autism or severe disabilities. I've been in my classroom for 6 years. I started off as a skills trainer, and after 1 year of that, I knew this is exactly what I wanted to do. So then I went to UH Manoa to get my degree or my certificate.
She was going to make something with this.
So yeah, so then that's me. This is my classroom. This is some of my kids. Some of, like we said before COVID, we got to go to the aquarium and do our CBI trips and just get to have fun together, and that's a picture of me graduating, right? And that's it. Thank you.
My name is Tatina Smith. I teach at Mililani Waina Elementary. I teach K through 5 FSC. One of the things that keeps me going is like the huge moments that they have. Like I was there when one of my students took her first steps, or when one of my kids could independently feed themselves. And those things are like life-changing. So I love those moments where it's just like, I just changed this kid's life. And that has like made me dedicated to FSC and the kids I work with.
Hi, thanks for joining us. My name is Lindsay Robertson. I teach at Roosevelt High School. I teach community-based instruction. So a little bit about my classroom. I teach a lot of community and life skills. I think that's one of the reasons why I continue in special education, is teaching students those life skills that are necessary for them to be independent as they become adults. Since a lot of the students I am teaching, or actually all of my students that I am teaching, are on their last leg of school and will be moving on into the adult world after they graduate at 22.
So the first prompt here is share your most memorable moment as an FSC CBI special education teacher.
I would love to go first. Oh, Dadita, go ahead.
I already kind of mentioned mine. So I had a student from kindergarten to 5th grade. And in 3rd grade, she took her first steps. And it was such a magical moment because the rest of our kids in our class were like so invested. So they all lined up and we're like, okay, are you ready? And when she took those first steps, they started screaming. Like our room was so loud and all the kids are so invested in this. And I'll never forget that moment.
Okay, I'll go. So for me, I mean, there's so many, right? As an FSC, CBI teacher, you have so many memorable moments because your day is like just trying to create these moments for your students. But for me, it was watching students who came through my behavior program, and they were 8th grade and they were finishing up the 8th grade and got to go up and get their honor roll certificate. And to me, it's just so huge, a huge moment for them that I could share in. And just watching that and watch how proud they were, like I will never forget that. And I think that's why like I love my job so much.
I can go next. One of my favorite memorable moments, I mean, like Crystal said, there's so many, it's hard to choose. But let's see, the year before COVID, so December, I took all the female students in my class to the mall, and we went to Sephora, and they had set up an entire, the Sephora staff had set up an entire demonstration to teach the girls how to do proper hygiene. So washing their faces, applying makeup if their parents gave them permission, and then taking off makeup, just basic skincare things like that. And it was really cool, yeah, to see in the community so many people embracing my students. And then at the end, they got gift bags full of makeup and stuff to take home. And it was really cool to see one of my students, one of my higher functioning students, wear the makeup the next day, and she had applied it correctly and properly. And since I do teach high school, it's always like, magical to see, when they embrace themselves in their developmental age rather than their, or their physical age rather than developmental age. So it was really awesome to see that.
So for me, it would have to deal with one of my students who had some behavior issues, which led to people not wanting to be around her. Like literally people would say, make sure you don't go near her, like literally screaming that across the hallway at the beginning of the year. And it felt absolutely horrible. To the end of the year, when she was just like completely embraced by everyone, and people were calling to her and they wanted her to come on and hang out with them, and end of the year party, she was invited, and it was just beautiful to see that she went from being kind of like pushed out even from her special education class peers to just completely being embraced by everyone. So it was a really special moment.
And what types of students do you typically service?
I service in my FSC classroom students who have an emotional disability, or they are on the autism spectrum, some of them. So it all depends. But it's, students who have had trauma in the past or continue to struggle managing their behavior. So there's a wide range, and the classroom is just designed to support them and give them the skills that they need to be successful in school.
I have a lot of diversity in my classroom. Actually, I've had a lot of diversity since I've been at the school in terms of both race and disability. So it's been really nice to have kind of different cultures and different things come together. But for disability categories, I have autism spectrum disorder, intellectual disability, which includes, I have a student with Down syndrome. I have a student this year with a visual impairment. I have a lot of students who have two of the same. So we have intellectual and visual impairment paired together. So multiple disabilities. We have autism and intellectual disability paired together. So just kind of depends. But yeah, lots of variety and diversity I've seen so far throughout my 4 years of teaching.
Majority of my students are ASD, so they're on autism spectrum disorder. I have a few with like cerebral palsy, some hearing impairments, visual impairment, and a few SLD students.
In my classroom, we have students with severe autism, severe behaviors, sometimes violent behaviors that might hurt others. So there's a lot of that. I have a lot of BCBAs coming into my room. And then I also have students with severe medically fragile students, right? So like some of them are staying at home right now because their parents are just too afraid of them catching COVID and possibly dying from it due to their health condition. So that's pretty much what my classroom consists of.
And before we move on, I just need to add in that and I think everyone will agree, like the students that we have in FSC and CBI programs, like they are so amazing. So like they are so much fun to be around and spend their days with.
We have a few more minutes if you want to expand a little bit on that last statement. Crystal, that was a beautiful statement there.
Well, I think, what plays into it is, as an FSC teacher, these students spend the entire day, their entire school day, with us primarily, and we really get to know them and they get to feel comfortable in our classrooms. And so their true personality comes out, and that caring side and the funny side. And it's just, it's great because I think teachers who, only see their students for maybe like 45 minutes to an hour every day, they don't really get to see, the whole child, and we get to experience every single part of this child's personality. And I love it. I enjoy it.
Thank you so much for sharing. We have another minute. Lindsay, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I was gonna just add to at different schools, you're gonna have different amounts of students. So I teach at the high school level, and I think we have about, I want to say next year we're gonna be at 37 students in CBI, which is a lot of students. So with that said, we are split into 4 different classrooms, and this year currently we're separated based on levels and abilities. So even though we're all under that CBI umbrella, you still have higher functioning kiddos that are going to be employable and have competitive work. And then you have, students who are a little bit more severe and lower and are going to be in like an adult day program type situation when they transition out from high school. So we have quite the range, just because, and as you probably know, a lot of the students that have autism, it kind of reminds me, autism is a spectrum. And I feel like disability is also the categories that we deal with at our school or at my school. It's a spectrum as well. We don't just have all kids are not the same. That's for sure. They're all different, and really getting used to their like Crystal said, their personalities. Yeah, they really come through and they really shine. And you get to see them throughout the day in different environments, and that's really cool to see that too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We will move on to our next prompt, and this one's about daily schedule. Here it is. Okay, so what does your daily schedule look like?
So we have the daily schedule that we plan for, but I think every teacher up here right now can agree that the day doesn't always go as planned. So we need to be very flexible. But for me, it includes starting our morning. We sit around in a circle, and every single morning, we don't ever miss it. We do something called temperature check, where we check in with each person. They share about how they're feeling, what they had for dinner last night. I usually throw in a question in there as well. But it's a time to where if one of our students is having a very difficult moment because of something that happened at home, then we're all on the same page about it. They can share it and we can support them, and we'll know it first thing in the morning. We do our core subjects, and then a big part of our day now is going out in our garden, and we're building that, and I love it. The students love it.
Part of my daily schedule looks a little bit different every day, of course, once again, being flexible. But pre-COVID times, we used to go out into the community. We used to use at least half of the day to go out into the community and practice different community skills, like using transportation, or looking for items at the grocery store, using money to make transactions, things like that. But on a non-community based day, once again, yeah, kind of like Crystal, we start off with I call it morning meeting, and then a lot of the domains that we address. So I have students working vocationally on campus, whether that's in the cafeteria, doing classroom cleaning, things like that are keeping them on campus and safe for right now. And then we also work on functional academics. So that's your, reading, writing, math. That's, I feel like a very minimal amount of time is spent on that, because at this point we want to be teaching those functional skills that are going to be helping those students as they transition into adulthood. one of my favorite things to teach is cooking. We have a lot of fun doing cooking. Doesn't happen every day, but when it does, of course, everyone gets so excited. We also work on leisure, so playing games, having conversations with peers, things like that. And our biggest one too is domestic. So that's going to be focusing on cooking, cleaning, laundry, sweeping, just those basic daily house chores that a lot of students need to learn. I feel like a lot of our students are better at life skills than some of the general ed peers. So it's really fun to work with them on those things.
Can I just piggyback on that, Lindsay? So at our school, we have senior projects. I'm not sure if that's like a statewide thing or not. And so many times when I go to these senior projects, the kids are like, oh, the hardest part was transportation. Like, I didn't know how to get from my house. You don't know how to use the, public bus transportation. I was like, even our kids know how to, I mean, not to sound like that, but like our kids practice it every day and they're perfectly capable to do it. So and for me, it's kind of like, if our kids can use public transportation, I'm sure you could figure it out if you really wanted to. But yeah, my daily schedule looks very similar to Lindsay's. And like she said, we used to go into the community a lot before COVID. Now we're finally getting the go ahead to go. We're going to the aquarium next week. Super exciting. I know. And yeah, I try to keep my schedule pretty much the same for the majority of the day, right? So like they come in, they have breakfast, they do their daily hygiene, whatever. We have a morning meeting. We do our PE after that, and then we have a lesson after that that kind of varies throughout the week, right? Sometimes it's a reading lesson, sometimes it's a cooking lesson, science project stuff. We just did like the cup challenge. They had so much fun with that. And then end of them do, and some of them get to do it in different classrooms, which is really great. Like I post it out to my Gen Ed teachers and be like, do you need us to do anything in your class? Wipe your chalkboards, your whiteboards, wipe your desk, sweep up the classrooms, and that's really great. Before COVID, we had really cool programs going into the cafeteria and helping out at the caf. Unfortunately, where they're not allowing us to do that now, and with good reason, right? But yeah, so we're just pretty much the same thing, very similar to Lindsay's, and just trying to keep that same schedule with a couple of tweaks in between. And the kids know, like, at this time, it's not always the same. It's kind of the same format, but we always do something different. And then they're very comfortable with that format. Then I can change it up and they know kind of like, this is what I'm supposed to expect. So that helps a lot.
Great. Thank you so much. I know, Evelyn, we had a little bit of trouble hearing at some of the portions. I'm not sure if it's your internet. Next time we can maybe give you a warning and you can try turning off your video. It might help, but it got good. And then there were some moments where it like sped up really fast. So it was an interesting thing that was going on. But we got most of it. And thank you so much for sharing. The next question is, yeah, definitely. The next question is about vocational skills. I'm going to go ahead and change that slide again. There it is. Okay, so we got a little bit into this in our last question, but maybe you can get a little bit deeper with it. What types of non-academic skills do you teach?
For my class, it's a lot of focus on Thrive skills, collaboration and all of those. There's a long list of them, and we try to teach all the skills that are going to help our students be successful around people, how to be on campus, because even if they are in an FSC class, the goal is always that eventually we'd like to transition them out and have them in their least restrictive environment. So preparing them by giving them the tools, like we talk about us having a teacher toolbox, and for my students, it's having their own toolbox full of these skills that they can always carry around with them. And it's simple things too, like when you're passing an adult on campus, make sure you say, good morning or good afternoon, or ask them how their day is going. And it really makes a difference. We've gotten a lot of feedback, like, oh, your students are always so like nice and happy and friendly. So those are the skills we like to focus on.
I agree with Crystal. Yeah, I think a lot of social skills are important. Those hellos, those goodbyes, those how are yous, those types of things. And when I think of vocational, I think a lot of job training. Some different job skills that I work with my students are clocking in and out of their jobs in class, wearing like a work uniform, making sure that their hygiene is obviously at the best level it can be. And then, of course, doing the actual skills themselves. We have been working in the cafeteria a little bit, rolling utensils, sorting out cups of foods. And then we also have worked in the different classroom settings, kind of like Evelyn said. I have general education teachers sign up and we go in and clean their classrooms. We also have been working at our greenhouse on campus, taking care of plants and landscaping and things like that. And our final vocational thing we like to work on, I have a classroom fundraiser that I use. We make ice cakes, which essentially are just frozen cups of water and syrup, and we sell them after school, and we make a lot of money for our classroom. But then also students are practicing job skills. Yeah, so we have lots of different placements, so I kind of pick and choose. Like I have one student who's really good at repetition, so she goes straight to the cafeteria where she can do the same thing over and over again. I have other students who are a little bit more free, go to the greenhouse, they can work up there. Just kind of depends on the students and what their strengths are. I really try to play into those instead of having them all work in the same area.
At elementary, I think ours are a little more of the hellos, goodbyes, the communication, some hygiene topics. One that I'm working on that's kind of interesting right now is I have a starer, and I'm trying to teach them how to appropriately kind of like glance at people or people watch, but not be like intrusive and like that kind of stuff. Just those interactions with people is more of elementary stuff.
Great. We have a little bit of time left. If anyone else, and for this question, if anyone else likes to like to add anything or add to your previous answer.
We're also doing gardening a lot. My goal is I want to teach them how to grow their own food, so that they can go home to their families and teach their families how to do the same. So we do that every day. And hopefully we can see that trickle out into the community eventually.
Fantastic.
I can add a little bit too. We also do, I focus a lot on fitness with my students. We walk around the school track. I'm actually currently working on becoming a certified yoga teacher for children, so I can start incorporating that into my classroom. Just some of those other like important, parts of keeping students fit and that whole child approach. I think that's important too, other than just the academics.
So, oh, sorry. Okay, how does your classroom look different from others?
I try to make my classroom look as homey as possible. So it is very homey in there. Talking about curtains and lighting and colorful. It's very, very colorful. And I just feel like it helps just kind of, and we play calming music all day long. It's kind of in the background, but like the kids pick up when it's not on. And it's really weird. You wouldn't think that they would like that kind of music, but it's just like this relaxation music that's playing very softly in the background. And it's just to create an environment that they want to be in, somewhere that it's just comfortable, and it makes like the learning fun, and I don't know.
I think one of the biggest things that I noticed about my room is, well, first of all, we have a washing machine and a dryer, and refrigerator and a range. So we have all of those components that help us get through, some of our life skills. So that's definitely a big difference, along with, of course, it being colorful and inviting and homey, compared to the rest of a lot of the high school classrooms. Another thing to really I've noticed when I walk into my room is there's always lots of adults, tons of adults. It's not just the students. And so that's a part of, being a special education teacher, especially in an FSC type setting. You're going to have adults and you're going to have lots of them, and you're going to have to learn how to manage them and really work with them as a team. And I think that's definitely can be a challenge, a blessing in disguise, and also a challenge, but definitely makes the environment totally different.
So I have little guys, so I have a lot of trampolines and swings, and they also have the luxury washer, dryer, kitchenette, shower, which is amazing. I used to have, before COVID, I had to put in a closet for this year, but this really cool massive tunnel with these streamers hanging, they got this reward time in, and they loved. I'm so sad it had to come down this year. And I wrote a grant for these crazy solar system light panels to cover all of the fluorescence. So my room is super soothing. So I love it. I go into other teachers' rooms and I see. So yeah, that's something I take pride in, my classroom.
Yeah, so it has been hard with COVID because we used to do a lot of close group things, and even our talks. We used to have this table. We all used to sit around together, and we can't do that now. And it just makes it a little more, we had new students who just started this year, so they're just hearing about this, table we all used to sit around, and they're hearing of all the little group projects we used to work on together and a craft center. And now everyone just has their own space in the room. So it's very different this year than it was in years past.
Thank you.
Yeah, in my classroom, like I said, we are all separated, but they are still expected to keep their mask on while we're in the classroom. But I did set up tables outside of my room, and they each have their own table outside. And if they need at any time a mask break, they know to ask or just to signal to us. And I am totally okay. We tell them we need mask breaks too. So that they know that we understand that it's not easy to keep a mask on all day. But if you need to, just be respectful of everyone and go outside to your area where you are away from everyone and take it off.
One thing I've been doing, and I know I teach a little bit older, so they're able to sit in their desks. I have physical barriers of shower curtain. So if they need a mask break or they want to take off their mask, at least there's that physical block, of shower curtain there. So maybe other people in the classroom don't feel as uncomfortable if they do need to take off their mask, or if it just comes off or whatever's happening, at least there's that protection. Because, we wear masks to protect obviously ourselves, but others, right? So with the shower curtain there, at least they're protecting others. And that's keeping a physical, like I said, barrier too, of other students know not to cross the shower curtain.
Those are great hints. Thank you for sharing. There's another question in the chat box that came in. It says, I'm currently transitioning in an FSC classroom with my mentor. It is both our second week in this classroom. What are some strategies to manage challenging behaviors? For example, when students refuse to listen?
So I teach the behavior FSC at my school. And as I shared in our other session that we were in, those things need to happen like in the very beginning of the school year. That structure has to be established, that relationship has to be established. If you do not have the structure and the relationship with the kids, it's very difficult, and it will continue to be difficult to manage challenging behaviors. But once you establish those, and you have high expectations for them and fair and consistent consequences, then you won't need to worry about behavior.
To piggyback, I cannot say enough consistent, and making sure that, because in our rooms there's tons of adults, that everyone is doing it the same way, because that's going to cause confusion for the child if everybody's not on the same page and there's different rules for each person. Another thing, I kind of forgot what I was going to say. I'll say it if I remember. That's it.
Great tips there. Anything else? Any other strategies?
I think another good strategy is, taking those students and from a behavior standpoint, determining what their preferences are and what they like, because you can use those preferences as a reward type system, to get them to, hey, if we are able to work and then do, and then we get our whatever the reward is, right? I think finding some sort of, whether it's individual token reward system or like a class token system, something that you can have so the kid has something to look forward to. I think reinforcement is really important, for managing, behaviors, or at least preventing them from happening to begin with. I think that's huge. Obviously, along with consistency and making sure there's not too many, changes in routine and schedule and whatnot.
Great. Go ahead, Datina. Yeah.
I remember what I was going to say. It was don't think like you put in a change and it's going to change right away, and like acknowledge small changes. Like every little change is a victory, because that just gives them more incentive to keep trying. So really celebrate the tiny victories and keep it in perspective of like how long it takes.
Yeah, and talking to them individually always helps. Students' behavior tends to get worse when you address it in front of the whole class, because they feel like they have to be that person, that's not listening and doing all those things that, obviously we don't want them to be doing in the classroom. So pulling them aside and just having that conversation to where you say, I know it's really hard, or what might be going on that, you're choosing to do this. And sometimes just establishing that one-on-one, just taking 2 minutes to talk to them, and maybe check in with them all the time, and just have that personal little 2 minutes or 1 minute and whatnot, their behavior would probably get better in class. Also, communication with home is very key as well.
There's a question that just came in the chat box. Is that like PBIS? Do you want to, sorry, the person who asked that question, do you want to give a little bit more context? I'm not sure what part of what you were referring to there.
I think they're talking about the positive reinforcement that Lindsay was talking about.
Okay.
Is that what you're referencing? Is the positive, or the positive reinforcement? Yeah, PBIS. I mean, P in PBIS is positive. So yeah, I mean, when I think of positive, you think of adding something to, increase a desired behavior. So if a student is sitting nicely, or I don't know what types of challenging behaviors you're dealing with, but if you're trying to increase a behavior, so if a student is sitting nicely or raises their hand, then that's when you reinforce, and that's when you're giving that positive reinforcement of like, hey, great job, thank you for sitting, or hey, thanks for raising your hand, or whatever you're targeting on. I'm not sure, like in terms of, what kinds of behavior you're dealing with. But if you're having a student maybe who's having like a full-on tantrum meltdown, when I think of challenging, it's kind of what I think of. Once again, you're positive, praising them for doing something simple as like, hey, thank you for taking a deep breath, or hey, thank you for sitting down, or hey, I really like how, you're just kind of talking them. When they start to show signs of like they're calming down, that's when you start to praise them as well too, because you don't want to praise their negative behaviors, right? You want to praise the good things, not the bad things, because then later, that's gonna come to bite you in the butt. I think another thing that like people commonly don't realize is like, say a student really wants access to a certain thing, like say a student really wants an iPad and it's not time for the iPad. If they throw a tantrum and then you give them that iPad because that's what they're wanting, well, then you just reinforce the tantrum because you're giving them what they want by giving them that iPad. So is I guess you really have to be stubborn and not give in. And hey, you could be all day when you're, with holding a demand, but you, like, the student will realize eventually, like, hey, this isn't going to work. Maybe this teacher's not going to crack. So, that's when they learn too, because I think you dig yourself in a deeper hole if you give in to them. Truly, it's not pretty.
Yeah, and that was very important. In the class, sometimes the best way to address a challenging behavior is not that you're ignoring it, but look around the class at everyone else who's doing what they're supposed to be doing and praise them. Because chances are the person who is doing the behavior is doing it for attention. It's an attention-seeking behavior. And if you deprive them of that, they'll know that, hey, I'm not going to keep doing this because it's not going to get any rise out of anybody. It's not going to get me attention. I need to start doing these things, these desirable behaviors in order to get my teacher's attention or my classmates' attention.
And Evelyn mentioned the phrase behavior momentum. I'm not sure if you guys are maybe familiar with what that means, but behavior momentum is essentially if you're trying to get a student to do a task that's really hard and non-preferred, something the student might not like to do, you want to create momentum by giving them easier tasks at first, things that are maybe more preferred. So then when you're maybe then presenting that harder thing, they already have that momentum of compliance that then they're more likely to do that harder task that maybe you began with, rather than giving them that difficult task right away. Like, hey, here's this non-preferred thing that you hate. I want you to do it right now. Instead, like, oh, hey, let's sit down, let's talk, let's have a snack, work their way up into it. I think that will really, help you in the long run too.
If someone would like to, speak on family, kind of like family partnerships or caregiver partnerships that are formed, I haven't seen that come up yet in the questions, but I know that's such an important piece of what you do. You mentioned a little bit with like who you collaborate with, but if someone wants to just end us with a little bit of that partnership work, that'd be great.
That's very important. I think one of the biggest skills of being a teacher is knowing how to talk to your students' families. They're all different. And the way that you approach one is not going to be the way that you approach another. And it's so key to have that support from them, to keep carrying on what you're doing in the classroom at home, so that there really is that transformation and that progress in your student. It's just essential to their progress that everyone's working and everyone's on the same page and there's that communication.